Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me. And welcome to everyone joining us on this live stream. Let's give ourselves a minute to make sure we're up and running. Usually, with the recordings, you will see everything from the beginning. But when you're live with me, there's a bit of a delay. So we'll give ourselves a couple of seconds to make sure everything's up and live. And here we are. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I did this live stream a little bit earlier because I'm going to combine a couple of topics tonight like I did yesterday, following the latest developments with the confirmed deaths of the Iranian president and the Iranian foreign minister alongside several others of the Iranian leadership in the helicopter crash that we spoke about yesterday. Yesterday, we spoke about the suspicions that are there surrounding this accident, supposedly. We had more revelations throughout the day about the weather disappearing yesterday, forecast from Iran, Israeli F-35s in the region during the accident. And today, what I wanted to talk to you about is a couple of things. Number one, are we witnessing the beginning of a coup attempt following the death of the Iranian president and the Iranian foreign minister? This is something that, again, if some people always assume that if we're discussing something or suspecting it, it's as if we're confirming it. We're not. We're here to have an input, observe, and analyze, and that's it. And we can be right and we can be wrong. However, based on this observation, attack or sabotage, not just an accident, because there are a lot of questions surrounding this incident. One of the things that the people behind it would want is unrest in Iran and a coup attempt in Iran. Now, with regards to Iran, we spoke about this previously, and I will repeat again. Some people in Iran do not like the government, do not like how the government is run. Some of them have established opinions and they have valid points. That's a point. Another point is, and that's the most important, by the way, when it comes to taking down the government in Iran, by the way, is that there are foreign forces who are interested to take down Iran, not for the sake of the Iranian people, but for their own sake. Because of Iran's position, because of Iran's support for the Palestinian cause, and because other positions that they have, and the fact that they do not submit to the hegemony attempts of the US empire, the US and obviously its allies. So, what did we have? We had a report yesterday after this accident, right, in IRNA, the Islamic Republic News Agency in Tehran, and they did not elaborate too much. Okay, now it could have been multiple things, but the fact that they did not elaborate, or if they later on elaborated, I haven't found elaboration from them about this, it could have been to potentially lower the tensions when it comes to this. What did they say? Police force martyred by outlaws in Tehran. That's yesterday. And it was only a couple of words, really. First Sergeant Farzad Ruzbahari was martyred by several bullets during a confrontation with outlaws in Narmak neighborhood in east of Tehran. Colonel Ali Ghassempour, a police official in Tehran, told IRNA, efforts are underway to arrest the criminals, he added. Now, whilst we had images of people in Iran praying for, that's when the report of the accident was out there, praying for the president and for the foreign minister, we also had other people, reports of other people supposedly celebrating because they do government. They could have used this as an attempt to go against the Iranian government. This, if this was the beginning of an attempt to cause unrest and division and potentially a coup or a regime change, a government change in Iran, I don't think it will be successful because Iran already faced multiple attempts that were at a far larger scale, include as the Green Revolution with the candidate for the presidency at the time, Musawi, if I'm not mistaken. That was large, you had lots of protests, and obviously you had other events in Iran where you had several protests. But this one, I do not think they will be successful personally with it, if that was the beginning of a coup attempt in Iran. That's number one. And I'll speak about the topics that I want to speak about, and then obviously we'll do it as usual. I will open the space up for you for all of your contributions to your comments and everything you have for me. The ICC. The ICC issued arrest warrants. The ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, he issued arrest warrants. Against who? He issued arrest warrants against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Why? Because they're guilty of committing war crimes against humanity and crimes against humanity in Gaza Strip since the beginning of Israel's war in Gaza. And they're both accused of using starvation as a method of warfare against Palestinians, as well as intentionally directing attacks against civilians and overseeing the extermination and or murder of Palestinians in Gaza. Let's stop there. Let's stop here for a second. So far, so good. Late, but better late than never. However, it's not only Benjamin Netanyahu, and it's not only Yoav Gallant. The ICJ case, it named many people, including people in the military and politicians as well, genocide intent, genocide statements from Israeli politicians, from Israeli leadership, from the Israeli army, and from the Israeli society as well. There was an intent for genocide. So you have more people to issue arrest warrants against. Now the problem begins. What's the problem? Here's the big problem, a massive problem. He also issued arrest warrants. He accused senior Hamas leaders Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed al-Daif, or Mohammed Diab Ibrahim al-Masri, his full name, and Ismail Haniyeh of overseeing crimes against Israeli communities on October the 7th when people were killed. They may be indicted for crimes that include killing and extermination, taking hostages, and overseeing torture and other inhumane acts. Okay. Why is there a problem? Why is there a problem? Number one, because you are putting the victim on par with the criminal. That's number one. From a legal perspective, the Palestinian people are under occupation, not only in Gaza and the West Bank, but throughout all across of Palestine. However, if we want to take only Gaza and the West Bank internationally, okay, from an international legal perspective, you're talking about occupied territories. What, by law, by international law, do the people under occupation, what are their rights? They have the right to fight and resist, including through armed resistance, to end the occupation. Guaranteed. You have UN resolutions calling for a Palestinian state. You have UN resolutions supporting the Palestinian Intifada. You have UN resolutions calling for the Palestinian refugees to return to their homelands. So, if the right of the Palestinian people to resist occupation and fight to end occupation is protected by international law, and I'm not going to go into human nature law or divine law, but we're just talking about international law because we're talking about the subject is international law, okay? You know, the biggest argument is it's a human instinct to defend yourself if you're being attacked. Even if anything written goes against it. Well, what do you mean? Someone's attacking me, stealing my land, killing me. I have a right to defend myself. Okay. What's the problem? The problem is that the ICC prosecutor is going against international law. That's the first problem. There's a second problem. What's the second problem? He is either deliberately ignoring or is unaware of, and both are bad, are just as bad, proof and evidence from Israel that it was Israel who committed the massacres against the Israelis on the 7th of October and not Hamas. But rather, Hamas conducted a military operation during which they took down the whole Gaza division in under 1 hour and kidnapped soldiers from the IDF. They later went on to Israeli territories or 1948 occupied territories, territories that they were expelled from and are not allowed to go back to, by the way, and also kidnapped more civilians. Okay, kidnapped more civilians. Evidence from Israel since October. The Apache helicopters recorded shooting at the revelers in the Nova Festival. Witnesses from all of the kibbutzes, Nir Oz, Be'eri, all of them, saying that our people were killed, the civilians were killed due to fire from the IDF. They recorded tanks from the ground, and there was a helicopter recording the tanks, Israeli tanks in Israeli kibbutzes, shooting left, right, and center. Multiple witnesses came out from Israel on live Israeli television saying, we were killed due to fire from the IDF. Then later on, there started to have attempts to silence them. Beautiful. What else did he ignore? The initial prisoners who were released. The first one of them was Yocheved Lifshitz. What did she say? By the way, who was released on a humanitarian basis. Israel did not want to accept her. Hamas offered to release her alongside another one on humanitarian basis. Israel refused to take her. They had to send her to Egypt. Egypt later sent her to Israel. What did she say? Obviously, it was a traumatic event, me being kidnapped. However, I was treated well. I was taken care of. During all of the way, Israel attacked us over 3 times. Still has a press conference. They tried to spin it as much as possible. It didn't really work. If you listen, if you sit down, you listen to everything she said word by word. Israel attacked them as soon, and every place they were going back to Gaza. There's more evidence to support that. What's the evidence? Released in Israeli media. Pilots confirming to Israeli residents in Nir Oz that we were ordered to shoot at any vehicle going from Israeli territory to Gaza. Indiscriminately. Shoot everyone. Hannibal directive. Very well known in Israel. The IDF soldiers that I spoke with personally, had an interview with, they confirmed that too. Okay. Again, what does that mean? Either the ICC prosecutor is unaware of these facts, which is very worrying, or he's ignoring them, even more worrying, or he's compromised, worse. That's the second bad thing about this. So you have the comparison between the victim and the criminal. Secondly, ignoring the facts on the ground. And third, what's the third thing? You're setting a legal precedent. In law, you have legal precedent. Legal precedent means if a case is brought up to the courts and this case states that I blame X person because what he did was wrong, in future cases, that could be used to legitimize future acts. What does that mean? Well, it means if the United States of America is occupied by a foreign army tomorrow, and this foreign army takes control, and there are militias in the US wanting to fight for their liberty, wanting to fight for the independence of New York, the independence of Texas, the independence of California, the independence of anything, they are deemed as war criminals. They're just as bad as the occupier. What kind of logic does that make? What kind of sense does that make? Doesn't make any sense. Any nation being attacked, they have a right to defend themselves. So you have these three extremely dangerous and toxic reasons why this was a big mistake, a massive mistake. That's from the ICC. Third thing that I want to talk to you about. I regularly bring statements from Israeli figures in the military, Israeli figures in intelligence, and Israeli politicians, of course, Israeli media as well, Israel society and what they're saying. But our main thing here is what people in the military are saying. Gaza division, which was the division that was attacked by Hamas, taken down, by the way, one of the most sophisticated attacks on an army by a what you want to call them, militia or fighting group or armed group. Okay, they took down the whole Gaza division. You see all of that talk about the 7th of October massacre, ignoring the fact that Israel was massacring the people. And on top of what I already said, forced hospitalizations of the victims of the Nova Festival, including 50 who committed suicide. And that was confirmed by their representative in the Israeli Knesset, by the way, that I spoke about several times. They're confirming. They constantly confirm these figures that it's not working. What now? A report from there was a radio show in Israel on 103 FM. That was also, the content was also published on their website and on the Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv website. From who? From the commander of the Gaza division. The commander of the Gaza division, former Central Command Colonel retired Gadi Shamni, criticized the conduct of the fighting. Quote, "This government is leading us to disaster." You had the previous head of the Mossad saying, if we continue down this road, we're doomed. Other figures I quoted were destroyed. Though ended, and Israel ended, Zionism ended, we're doomed. More and more people are saying that. So what did they say in this article? And that was from Sunday. On the 226th day of the difficult war in Gaza, we rescued a couple of abductees' bodies in operations where IDF troops were killed. Okay, someone's telling me, by the way, about the audio. I hope you can hear me well. If you can't hear me well, tell me so I can try and change something with the settings. If someone can please confirm that the sound is good, so we can continue. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. What did that article say? The IDF is shuffling along in the Gaza Strip, not doing anything in the north. That is a derivative of some plan or defined goals, and this is the result, he said. Someone who leads a line, everyone lines up. I think it is quite clear that we will not achieve the war objectives that have been set. There will be damage to Hamas, but not a military and governmental coup, because we are not talking about that. It is hard to see how all the abductees are returned. The government condemned us to shuffling for years with casualties, isolation of the country, and severe damage to the economy. The worst thing of all is the dramatic erosion of the state status. Until October the 7th, we were considered a regional power. This will invite us into a lot of trouble. He later clarified about what they call the day after. I'm the last to say that it's simple to bring an alternative and bring in the PA or an international force. It's a complicated thing. You have to prepare for it in a serious way. I have no doubt that there should be a period of time. If you want to bring in someone to take responsibility there, first of all, Hamas needs to be greatly weakened, much more than it is today. What is that signaling? That's from me before I continue. What is that signaling? that Hamas is powerful, that they haven't even weakened Hamas, that all of the talk of the weakening Hamas is rubbish, as much as they want to cover it. They told us that they dismantled 40 of their brigades out of 24 and they were going to finish them off in Rafah. Little we knew that they're going to go to Rafah, not do anything and get beaten and attacked everywhere, then go to Jabalia and face the harshest resistance so far. What does that mean? Not that just Hamas is powerful, Hamas is more powerful. And we say Hamas and the resistance movements. Which reminds before I continue, excuse me for a second, because I forgot to tell you one thing about the ICC. The ICC, another problem that we had, I labeled 3 problems. There's another problem. They said things about Hamas. Why this could be politically motivated, or why didn't they say anything about the other Palestinian resistance movements then? It's not only Hamas fighting. So why did you only include Hamas? You have more than 6 different resistance groups, some of them very substantial and very powerful. Why did you not mention them? Is it because in the minds of the people, all they know is Hamas, Hamas, Hamas? You have resistance movements with an Islamic background, nationalist background, socialist background, secular background. Why don't you talk about them? To show that it's only Hamas with this type of ideology? I just had to put that in before I continue. He then said, Hamas is not weakened. Only with a joint effort will it be possible to say that it will succeed. The alternative is the same shuffling of years, returning the army to fight again. In Khan Yunis again and everywhere, and we get injured. All right. During the conversation, he also criticized the government's policy in the north, not just Gaza, the north. Quote, no goals were defined at all. There is no plan. The minimum that should have been there was to take control of the area from which the settlements are fired from. The IDF is a small army that is unable to fight on 2 fronts. An admission that they're a paper tiger. And what is happening now? They are going to pass an evasion law that will further increase the pressure on the soldiers. I think that today the majority of the IDF soldiers are in the West Bank. I already see the displeasure among the soldiers with the emphasis on the reservists. This government is leading us to disaster. I support the military pressure that is now being exerted in the Gaza Strip. Okay, let's hold on for a second before we continue again. What's happening with the army? Well, firstly, you had calls for people to refuse to serve before 7th of October. Benjamin Netanyahu had a letter from 1,000 Israeli pilots saying we won't serve under a dictatorship after they had the judicial reform in Israel, alongside many calls for people to refuse to serve in the army. Not to protect democracy for everyone, to protect democracy for and keep the Jewish supremacy. But they don't want Jewish supremacy on Jewish supremacy, with obviously their definition of Judaism, and bearing in mind the fact that they are abusing the religion and using it as a tool of control of their own population, and using it as a facade to achieve or implement and continue the implementation of a neo-colonial, violent, and supremacist ideology. And we had people, so we had that. Then we had people swearing at Netanyahu before they invaded Gaza, saying you neglected the people who were abducted, you killed them, my friends were killed, this and that. When he visited the Gaza Strip, the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip, and he spoke with the reservists, people were shouting at him, swearing at him. People refused to see him in the hospital. Pro to everything. Then the war began. 2,000 ran away from the war in the early days from one brigade with two of their commanders, disciplinary action taken against them. According to Israeli reports, a fifth of the Israeli army in Gaza was killed due to friendly fire. Them killing Israeli prisoners who fled, who managed to flee, 3 of them, and in many cases confirmed, verified. They killed over 90 now of the Israeli prisoners in Gaza. Okay. That's another thing for the ICC, by the way. If you're blaming the Palestinian resistance, they're keeping them protected. Israel is killing its own citizens in Gaza. approximately almost 100 now, Israelis. And many of them, by the way, the parents knew exactly what. Now, many people know already and they protest, but there were certain cases that I spoke about. There was a video titled with a thumbnail IDF Auschwitz at the time, where they knew a Hamas leader, Qassam brigades, they wanted to assassinate him, but he had 2 to 3 Israeli soldiers with him, and despite that they bombed him, killing them deliberately. And his mom made a massive scene. She posted it on Facebook. She made a scene at the funeral. She wrote that they neglected him, and obviously she's been shut down. More than enough evidence, and that I don't know why the ICC is ignoring, by the way. He continued, and then obviously you have now, excuse me, before I continue to the last paragraph, hundreds of reservists' parents sending letters to the army, I will not allow my son to serve again in Gaza. Many of them refusing. Reports about dozens here, dozens there, but we're talking about tens of thousands, to say the least. Apart from those who fled the country, including the son of who? Benjamin Netanyahu, who was chilling in Miami. That's why they're trying to force the ultra-Orthodox Haredi community to participate. But it's not working. They told them, we'll flee. We'll leave Israel. If it's between the Torah learning and Israel serving in the army, we won't serve. We will not serve. We will go away. All right. So that's the problem that they have with the army, to add to obviously what he is saying. In the end, he finished. The commander of the Gaza division, former Central Command, said, I don't, quote, I don't understand why they removed them for months. He means the Israeli army. When the IDF was at the height of its offensive momentum, they stopped the attack for more than 2 months. As in, Israel stopped the attack on Gaza for 2 months when they withdrew Division 36. I think the pressure does help in the context of a deal, but when there is an opportunity, we do it, even if it means stopping the fighting in the south. If we don't stop, we will never be able to take care of the north, in reference to obviously Lebanon and Hezbollah. We are putting the country in a mess that could ultimately end in abject failure. Without a normal conscription law, every citizen of the country carries a burden in some way. We cannot survive in this region. This is an existential threat. This is an existential threat, or an existential need. Again, a Gaza division commander saying that, similar to all of the figures in the Israeli military and intelligence that I spoke about previously, let alone previous prime ministers. If we wanna avoid the politicians, previous prime ministers of Israel, like Ehud Olmert or Ehud Barak. These obviously were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. Let me now open the space up for all of you. Firstly, thank you, Alan, Marwin, Auntie K, Starrett, Hanan, Y, and Sia. Thank you so much. Auntie K is saying Wopila, or thank you for keeping us informed. You're more than welcome. My absolute pleasure. Hanan Y saying thanks for your honest reports. I know you're Palestinian and how difficult these times must be for you, as they are painful for any decent human being. Your work is so appreciated. Much love. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And we have to obviously do our work, but thank you so much for your support. And see us saying free Palestine, indeed. And again, welcome to everyone who has been joining us. Let me make sure that try and make sure that I haven't missed anything from the beginning. And by the way, if any of you have any questions now, you can drop them now. And if you wouldn't mind highlighting them with a logo or something so that they're more visible. Let me head back to the beginning of the chat. At least that's if I can. Let me see. Why doesn't YouTube make it a little bit easier? They don't want to make it easy. Catherine Foley saying ICC can't arrest Palestinian resistance. They're protected under different articles within the UN. Absolutely. Now, the question is he aware of that? Is Khan aware of that or not? And if he's not aware of that, that's bad. If he's aware of it and ignoring it, that's also bad. And if he's compromised, then that's bad. All of it is bad. But look, when the ICJ case happened in the beginning, I personally made my opinion very clear from a Palestinian perspective. We've seen that from a very long time ago. We have no faith in what's called international organizations. Yeah, all ink on paper. Okay, the UN is a front of the US, established by after World War II, after the League of Nations. The ICJ is judicial organ of the United Nations. And if you're avoiding George Bush and Tony Blair and previous war criminals, then who can you talk to, really? Putin? Who can you talk to? Either we have a fair system, and it's important and it's good to have an international law that actually works, that actually functions, that actually treats everyone as human beings, and follows everyone and punishes everyone from each side if they commit something wrong. We don't just want one side to be punished and the other side to be, no, like what they're doing. But that's not the case. And that's dangerous. And obviously they're protected. I spoke about it. You're under occupation. You have rights. It's absurd. It's bizarre. And again, if he's unaware of it, that's bad. If he is aware of it, then what are you doing exactly? What are you doing? Ping one, are US soldiers serving in the IOF now? Not from the US Army, but dual nationals. And many in Israel have dual nationality. So you will have people who have an American citizenship, a British citizenship, other European countries, other countries' citizenships, and they would fight. And one thing that is very important, by the way, Israel, in many of these people who aren't based in Israel all the time, for example, they don't consider them in the death toll that's already covered up. So they won't even consider them. Some of them, they won't give them a military burial, right? So people need to take that into consideration. Abed Nazir is saying Karim Khan didn't just say about Palestinians hostages who are in jails. You're right about that. And you also add Karim Khan is a Zionist puppet of Israeli vampires regime has been brought by AIPAC. Look, I mean, I judge by the actions. Whether he's a puppet or he's compromised or whatever it is, I judge the action. You are the prosecutor. What did you establish this on? I go and look at the law and the UN resolutions, right? And the case in the ICJ. Severely wrong. There's something very, because this isn't just about the Palestinian people anymore. If you're setting this legal precedent now against the Palestinian people, saying that basically if you do fight occupation, then you're a criminal, you're setting a legal precedent for every nation. For every European nation, for every African nation, for every Asian nation, for every American nation, all of them. If they get invaded by someone else now, and they retaliate or work to end occupation or get equality because you're talking about martial law, then you're a criminal. So everyone's at risk here. It's not about the Palestinian people anymore.